Oh, hang on. So sorry, the camera's not working. So
Camera's not working.
hold on a sec.
Right.
I can't reach it. Apparently somebody took the camera. Oh, you could just do it on the camera.
I'm not going to risk falling over in front of everyone.
Thanks, Harry.
Twist off, please.
That's it.
Just watching the table, right? Good.
I'm in the right place if I can.
That's true. Close to any. Lovely. Smashing. Can everybody see now? Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
Is that working now? Sorry. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit high.
It's a bit high.
Yeah.
It was a look and a half. I'm so
Good
sorry.
feedback. It's like being at home.
So it's just a polite way of saying I'm short, so they can't see me.
Is that
I think that's,
better?
yeah, that's
A bit wonky.
Better? Yeah.
No more feedback. Yeah.
Can you sit? Oh, gosh, I've got the wrong glasses. I should be that much more. Lovely. Okay, welcome everybody. It's good to see you here this afternoon. I'd just like to welcome Mark. I think this is your first
Thank you.
Council of Governors. I don't think we've got any of our other new associates online. I can't see unless anybody can see any names, but certainly they're hoping to attend these. Obviously, once they get the dates, well, they've got the dates in their diaries now, and we'll hopefully be able to attend. Oh,
I'm
Deb.
here, Alison. Hi.
Oh, great. Thanks, Deb. Oh, is this your? Oh, yes. Is this your first? I thought you might have been here in December, but maybe not. Welcome. Now, I also ought to note, I don't know if Andrew Buckley's on the call this evening, but I do need to note that his last Council of Governors meeting, he's moving on to pastures new. So anyway, we'll have it minuted, but just to say thank you to him for all his contributions as a governor. And we're in the process of identifying somebody from the business group in Milton Keynes to take his place. So obviously we'll come back to the council when that's established. And also I'd like to welcome Laura Price, who's over in the corner there from Age UK, who very kindly is coming along to do a presentation on Milton Keynes Age UK. So this is part of when we revamped the agendas to look at what would be useful to Council of Governors, and bringing in partners to do presentations was felt to be a very useful thing, and to help us with our contact and outreach into the community. So welcome, I look forward to your presentation. Okay, apologies for absence. Have we got any listed at all?
We've had Niran's, Claire Hills, Stevie Jones, and Ganesh, and Heidi.
Oh, lovely. Okay, thank you very much.
Joe sent me a message that he'll be on in a few minutes. He's just finishing another meeting.
Oh, great. Okay, that's smashing. Any declarations of interest from anybody with the agenda today? No? Just remember to keep looking up at the screen as well. And then going on to the minutes from the last meeting, they've been looked at. Has anybody spotted any omissions or inaccuracies? Or if you're happy with them, then we can sign those off as correct. Yep. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll note that. Going on to the action log. First item 15. This is around the task and finish group to be formed. As council can see today, we've got the terms of reference for a couple of the group, the COG, and also for the appointments committee to hopefully be approved today. That's part of the process, and Thomas has done a workflow, which is with Danielle at the moment. Just there are a couple of omissions, I think, that she wanted to put in. So once that workflow is done, that will then be ready to take to the task and finish group. And Kwame, I think you're going to look at dates when people are available, so we can try and coordinate a meeting as soon as possible. Is that right?
Yes, once that's complete, yes. Once the flowchart, then we can have an idea of how the discussions will be undertaken. Then we can start looking for dates. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks. I don't think Danielle's here. I'll catch up with Danielle, because obviously we want to get this underway as soon as possible. So thank you very much for that. And then the update on the rollout of the MyCare portal. I don't think is John here? No, don't think he is. We have got an update which I've run off. This is from Zesty, the company that we're working with. They have a deployment team who is coming into the hospital during February to confirm resources and a kick-off meeting, hopefully by the end of February or beginning of March. This is around working with us around the issues that have been raised around making this a successful portal for patients and users. Now, it also says that the go live date, I think, which was hoped to be April, it won't now be, because typically the work that they're coming in to do has a lead in time for 20 to 21 weeks from the start. So I think once we're aware of, I don't know, will you be talking to them, Terry, or will John be?
Yeah.
John would be talking about. Okay, what I'll do then, perhaps is ask John to give us an update once they've had the conversation, so we can try and get a more concrete date when we can expect that to really roll out. But I think obviously the proposal is that we make sure we try and get it as good as possible and as user friendly as possible before it's actually launched in any significant way. So I don't know if there are any other questions or comments on that which need to be fed back, but I mean, obviously at any time you can contact us just to ask if you have any queries on that. Okay, so that's the two. So we'll keep that one on. In fact, we'll do both, and then we can confirm once the task and finish group has started. We can confirm and then close that, and then also we'll keep the MyCare portal on so that we can keep an eye on progress, because obviously it's a significant piece of work. Okay, anybody noticed any other actions that aren't on the log at all? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll go on then to my update. Obviously that's attached. I've done the written one, and again I've included my report from the January board meeting for any governors that might not have attended or seen the report from there. The only thing I suppose I would pull out is I'm looking forward to, I'm doing the trolley round with Claire in March, going around the ward, so I'm looking forward to that. So I think that would be a really good experience actually to see things, and obviously encourage colleagues to get booked in as well if you can. I think Claire would love the support of people coming around. And the other thing I was hoping to be able to report back, I had a meeting planned with the chair of Oxford University Hospitals today. Unfortunately, he wasn't well, so it's been rescheduled for March. So I will feed back to councillor governors at the next meeting, but it's very much around going around some of our services, looking at some of the services that we have here, like renal services from Oxford, and having a good general discussion around the future and obviously population growth and all sorts of things. So hopefully it will be a very productive discussion. Okay, any questions at all on my report? No? Okay, thank you very much. And I see Joe is here, brilliant timing. Okay, thanks Joe. Hand over
I am. Apologies for being late. Thank you very much for that. First thing to say really is just talk a little bit about what's happening in the organisation operationally. We have seen a tiny reduction in the numbers of patients coming through the emergency department since sort of pre-Christmas, which were sort of record levels every day, and that's been the case nationally as well. So there's been a slight drop off in COVID and a slight drop off in the numbers of patients with flu, which is a real positive. We still have the equivalent of around about 3 extra wards worth of patients open to cope with this winter, and relative to the sort of baseline funding levels that the organisation would expect to see. So we're by no means back to any sort of normality, but we are certainly keeping our head above the water, and as has been the case for a significant period of time, we maintain our position, relatively speaking, in the top quartile of the NHS in terms of emergency department performance. And linked into that, obviously, there's been a lot of news around ambulance waiting times and delays for handovers, patients from ambulances. Again, we continue to perform very well relative to the rest of the NHS, which is a helpful position to be in. A couple of other things to update, if I may. Firstly, for those of you that have been on site recently, and I'll come on to talk about the estates more generally in a second, but the radiotherapy building is now going up at pace, and time-wise, we're expecting that to finish sometime in the spring of next year, which is great news. And then that's the up bit. Then the down bit is the strikes continue nationally across the NHS, and understand that the RCN has just announced another 3-day strike in March. We have so far not been significantly impacted by any of the professional groups going on strike, and that is a positive. However, quite clearly the mood of the workforce in Milton Keynes does reflect the overall mood of the different professional groups across the NHS, and that is not great for morale, and we are managing that as best we can locally. So those are the sort of key headlines. Apologies, Alison, I don't know whether you did mention that one of the reasons I was late is just because I am doing the national digital role now, which is in part in recognition for how well Milton Keynes Hospital as a whole has progressed the digital agenda. So that's just occupying a little bit of my spare time. So apologies for being late.
No problem, Joe. No, I hadn't mentioned it actually, so that's good timing to just let everybody know. So I mean, I think it's significant for us as an organisation as well that you are sort of so directly involved, Joe. So I think it's a real benefit to us going forward as well. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions for Joe on his updates at all? No? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, Joe, can I just ask you to go on to the capital programme then?
Yes, of course. We continue to progress the issues around the, I was going to say MSCP. It's nothing like having a whole load of acronyms. For those of you that haven't gone into it, it's the multi-storey car park 1, which is the multi-storey car park opposite the main entrance, the oldest multi-storey car park. We are doing a significant amount of work, and that is, of course, creating a few issues there. I'm delighted to say that the White House endoscopy work is just coming to an end now. For those of you that don't know, this is about increasing our ability to carry out endoscopies. As our population grows, doing endoscopies is a service that we can carry out off-site relatively easily, and that work has been going on well and is almost at the end now, which is nice to see. And finally, one that we might normally skip over, but just to bring it to the attention of the Council of Governors, in every year since I've been here, noise at night has been flagged as an issue for inpatients in our hospital, because we have normally 4-bedded bays across the majority of our hospital. So one of the things that we have been doing is trialling fitting bay fronts again in wards 15 and 16 to try and reduce the noise at night across the whole of the wards. Those are in now. We haven't found any operational issues in having them in, which is good news. What we have yet to get is any significant feedback from our patients. That work is in train to see whether it is genuinely reducing our noise at night in our big wards. So that's the sort of in the report. The thing that isn't there, which is worth noting, is that we are in line, and I'm going to look at Terry, who I can see just on camera. We are in line to get a government grant to replace all of the old windows and doors in phase 2 of our hospital, and that is part of our continued approach to ensure that we reduce our carbon footprint across the hospital. It's a government grant that we have to contribute to, but that would make a real improvement in the environment for our wards in phase 2 of the hospital. So I will pause there, if that's okay, Alison.
Thank you very much. Any questions at all around the state? No? Okay, just really keep our fingers crossed as well, I suppose, for the national funding for some of the big projects we want as well. I mean, I know we're all waiting, but let's hope.
Yes,
Thank you very much for that. Thanks, Joe. going on then to item 9, that's first of all sort of board committee updates, and this one is the audit committee, and there's a paper attached. Just wondering, did you want to pull anything out from your report at all?
Well, I think just in summary, just for the governors, having been here a year now, I think my general opinion is that the process and systems that we have in place here are robust. And I think it's a very positive approach taken to the recognition and management of all risks. I think within the report, I reference the evidence base for that opinion, which is external audit, internal audit reports, subcommittee meetings and deep dives, evidence and information received through the exec, etc. Plus, of course, the opportunity that one has to triangulate this information through ward visits and questioning and asking execs, and as a committee we've done that quite extensively. So I think you can take assurance that the executive have in place a robust and comprehensive system, and the report outlines the key activities we've undertaken throughout the year. There's some more work going on around how we look and report risks, which I think is very positive and pleased to see. But basically that's it. I don't know if anybody's got any questions.
Thanks. Any questions at all? Maxine?
I was just going to ask what the difference between substantial and reasonable assurance is. Yeah, that might be. Just looking at around the complaints and powers and patient experience, what would make it a substantial assurance?
In terms of the internal audit reports, yeah. So it's to do with the failures that we find when they examine the control failures and the quality of the processes that are in place. I can't answer specifically what specific steps take you from one level to another. I don't have that to hand because I haven't interrogated the different levels that we work at. What I would say is that reasonable assurance, let's put it another way around, substantial assurance is very good. So that is kind of a little bit exceptional. Reasonable assurance is absolutely fine. Nothing to worry about in terms of that. Terry, I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I just add a little bit. I think really helpful overview. I think there's a scoring system across both internal audit and counter fraud where they basically, through their field work, if they find areas for improvement and make recommendations, they would typically categorise them as low, medium or high. If they found lots of problems that have got higher risk and big recommendations, you won't get a reasonable, you'll get an inadequate. And if they find a series of small risks, that can still give you substantial assurance. But more often than not, they found not very much at all for substantial assurance audits. We had some the year prior as well, which was really great news for us. But it really depends also with the scope and breadth of what they're looking at. And typically they will always find things. Otherwise, to be quite honest, they're not doing the job thoroughly.
So reasonable is reassuring, so or assuring, I should say.
Is it fair to say, Terry, they did a lot more work in the last year than they?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's a point around that Terry's making about finding things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else? As I say, with the subcommittees, we are reporting this is the plan, to COG on a regular basis. So, I mean, once you have reports from all the subcommittees, it'd be really useful to get governors' feedback as to whether or not they find it useful and if there's anything else or any other way of presenting it that will be helpful. But we'll trial it out this year and see how it goes. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Gary. Going on then to the Inclusion Leadership Council report, which again, there's the reports attached. I've just gone past it. Right. Well, I can pick up on this because I chair it. As I say, there have been some tweaks to it just in January in terms of the agenda to try and make it more, I suppose, interactive and those that from the networks and others that are taking part, so they actually have as much input as possible. And also, we're also trialling, I'm going to be sitting down with Kwame before the meetings to look at particular items that are coming to Trust Board to ask, particularly the network groups and chairs, to look at, to get their view on things. So that because the Trust Board papers tend to be quite numerous, we hope to be able to really sort of assist by focusing in where it would be really useful to have some input from the council itself. So we're going to give that a go and see how that works out. But also as well, around the pieces of work the networks are all doing a lot of work. And we want to make sure that that's reflected and comes back into the meeting and is minuted. And also, you know, there may well be things that are relevant to bring up to Trust Board and put them in the public domain as well. So this was very much around a review, having run for about a year or so. And hopefully, you know, we think this will add sort of quality and certainly interested input from all those taking part. I hope that's Shelley.
Question about how it's working. Is it purely a sort of proactive thing of we're looking to see what we can invent or get better or whatever, or is it actually as well looking at people complaining about it not happening?
It is a mixture. It is very much around asking for suggestions how to improve things. And of course, all this is very much around the whole inclusion agenda that we have across, you know, all protected characteristics, but it's for our staff, but also obviously we're thinking in terms of patients as well. So we often have input from that side of things as well. But it is also reflecting on things that have happened that can be brought through. And we're asking this council really as well to inform the board where they feel actually we should put some more focus. You know, are there things we're missing? The idea is that we're not, you know, as a trust board feeling that, you know, we have stuff coming up from the divisions and sort of almost sifting and deciding what should come to board just on our own. We really want this to be an interactive thing and for our, you know, members of our staff across the organisation to really give us some focus and say actually what's important to us is X, Y, and Z.
There's a reference about developing a frameworks for staff networks. Just say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think this was around, now let me just remember the detail. I believe this is around getting some sort of consistency for networks. So in a sense, it's to assist in having a very clear sort of focus and what expectation and to get that sort of feedback from them, which can be really used. But also I think it's around making sure that the work they're doing is fed in carefully as well, so that we can make sure that we don't miss anything about around the work that they're doing.
Just having some consistency about the governance of the groups.
Yes, yeah, that's the word.
Governance.
It was going around my head, I thought.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, struggling for a word. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely around the government. Yeah, thanks, really
Okay.
helpful. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Well, as I say, you know, we'll I'm sure there'll be stuff coming through here and it will be going up to the board, but also anything that the council of governors would like to hear as well, we can bring that back. And I'm hoping as well that possibly as we go forward as well, that some of the networks, you know, might present perhaps on some of the projects and things that they're doing. So council of governors can really see how there's that sort of input and interaction and how they're influencing as well what we do. Thank you very much. Right, so actually now, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, really, would you like me to?
Now, I'm going to ask, I'm relying on Julia on this one.
Try and get your presentation up and share the screen. This is deeply challenging for me.
I can share if you want, Julia.
Oh, that would be very helpful. Yes, please, if you wouldn't mind.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you, Carmen. Carmen, do you want Laura to say next slide when you need to move it?
Yeah, she can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Direction. Okay.
Yeah, do you
Come
want
on.
to come up here? You sit next to me. Do you want to sit down or stand up?
Yeah, I'll sit down. Yeah, it's injuries.
And then they can see you as well on the camera.
Get me on camera. as well.
Thanks very much.
Lovely, thank you, Kwame. So thank you everybody for inviting me to come along today. So my name is Laura Price. I'm Director of Home and Hospital Services with Age UK Milton Keynes. I've been with the organisation when I'm in my 19th year now, worked in a variety of roles. And I'd like to sort of take this opportunity to talk to you about our organisation, who we are, what we do, and more importantly, how we work with the hospital and the relationship that we have with the hospital. So I do have some notes, so please do excuse me referring down to them. I'm not going to go through the slides in the detail because obviously they're there for you to read. But this is just, just to start off with a few facts. A lot of people do still call us Age Concern. We haven't been Age Concern for 15 years. We merged with Help the Aged, and that's how we became Age UK. So yeah, if you could move on, next slide, please, Kwame. So we are Age UK Milton Keynes. I note that on your agenda you called us Age UK. Okay, so please don't worry, but we do really like to stress and tell people that we're an independent charity. We're here for the people of Milton Keynes. The money that we raise stays in Milton Keynes. We are a brand partner of Age UK, the national charity, and there are 115 brand partners around the UK, but we don't get any funding from them. It is literally the resources that they're able to provide us, with information, leaflets, etc., and using, of course, the brand name, which is recognised. They do also offer us the opportunity to tender for some grants if they do secure some funding, but like I say, we do have to tender for it. It's not guaranteed that we will get it. So please do, if you're talking about us, please do call us Age UK. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a charity, we're here to support a specific cohort of people, and for us that is the older people of Milton Keynes. When I say older people, I'm talking 55 and over, which really these days 55 is not considered old. And in fact, the average age of people that we do support is probably around 82. So it is maybe the older people. But we're here for what the older people want, what they're asking for. And as you can see there, we have a vision, we have a mission, and we have strategies that we hope will enable us to achieve those visions and missions. Next slide, please.
Kwame,
Next slide, please.
is he frozen?
Is he frozen?
Oh, no.
Okay, we're there. Thank you.
I think I think there's a delay.
Oh, thanks, Kwame. No, thank you. So how do we know what older people want from us? We will conduct surveys, we will have feedback questionnaires, we'll talk to people face to face, over the telephone, etc. We'll listen, and we will try and identify gaps in provision of what older people might need, and then hopefully source the funding so that we can provide those services. And we're always monitoring, we're always looking at what we're doing. Age UK will probably have national campaigns, but we will localise those. So we'll bring them down and like I say, campaign ourselves through our social media, etc. Thank you. Next slide. So as an organisation, our funding comes from various sources, and the services that we offer dependent on where that source of income comes from. 50% of our income actually comes from our retail side of the charity. We have 8 retail shops around Milton Keynes, and I would urge you to specifically visit our home and furniture store in Kiln Farm. Great, not only new furniture, donated furniture, some really good quality products that are there. So we also will then tender for grants, and we have commission services and services where we have a charge of a full cost recovery. But the income that comes from our retail and from our fundraising, that enables us to provide some free services. Okay, you're all right to move on.
The anticipated.
Yeah, it was, thank you. So, yeah, so moving on, our chargeable services are our independent living service, and this is very much a service around providing practical support to keep people in their own homes. And you can see from the slide the kind of practical support that we're able to offer to older people. And we have a team of staff. As an organisation, we have approximately 140 staff and over 350 volunteers. So we are quite a big charity, but we do use paid staff that deliver the chargeable service. And it has that added value if they build up a relationship with their client, they're seeing them on a regular basis, they're able to identify when there are any changes in their needs and support. We do not do personal care as an organisation. We're not CQC registered. It's all about the practical support that we offer. We then move on to our supportive services. So these are services where we've perhaps been able to secure some funding or some grants, etc., to enable us to provide these. These services very much focus on the health and well-being of older people and reducing social isolation. So we have a fantastic team of volunteer befrienders, and that can be face-to-face befriending, telephone befriending, and walking befriending. So you've got the physical activity, like I say, you're improving their health and well-being, and they're getting some companionship. A recent service that we started up is our digital inclusion support service. So, you know, very much identified with COVID that so many services went online and you were getting older people being excluded. Families do tend to sort of buy their older relatives technology, but don't perhaps always have the time to show them how to use it. So once again, we have a fantastic digital champion, volunteers who can go in that person's home and deliver face-to-face training. You know, maybe things like helping them to make online appointments, prescriptions, shopping, family video calls, things like that. And then we move on to our day services. So our day services, there is a small charge to the client to have these, and this is very much around companionship. So we have friendship clubs, we have long lunch clubs, there's refreshments, there's freshly cooked 2-course dinners. We also offer a meal delivery service. We started this up during COVID and we carried it on because it was so popular. We approximately deliver 150 meals a week to older people out in the community who aren't able to get out of their homes for whatever reason. We have volunteers that deliver those meals. And once again, it's seeing that person, it's some welfare visit as well, keeping an eye on that person. We also offer what we call our COGS and Sparks. So this is around maintenance cognitive stimulation therapy. So this is a group for people who perhaps just been diagnosed with dementia. So we're doing some specific therapy activities with them to help them with their cognition. Not only does the person who comes to the club have a fantastic time, but their carer, their loved one, will also get a bit of respite. You know, so they can bring the person with the memory issues, the cognition, to our club, and then they get a couple of hours to themselves as well. And that's a 6-month programme. So they start off on what we call the COGS, and after 6 months, we then move them on to the Sparks. And we're opening up more and more Sparks at clubs around Milton Keynes. Then we move on to our free services, and this is something that all brand partners will provide, and that's predominantly information advice, where at the end of the phone, you know, an older person can phone up with any sort of query and ask us, you know, example we had last week, somebody had a dead rabbit in the garden and didn't know what to do with it. So they call us and we will do what we can to support and signpost where they need to go. Our main office is actually over the road at Pear Tree Bridge, so you're always welcome to drop in at any time. And there we also have a big range of leaflets and, you know, information that you're able to pick up. We also have a space in the main entrance here at the hospital. I don't know if you know, but we're there next to Costa, and we share that space with Carers MK. And once again, it's all about information and advice. Anybody can come in, staff, patients, visitors, you know, that can come in if they've got any questions that they'd like to ask, or even just to have someone to talk to or a shoulder to cry on. This has happened many a time. I'm now moving on to the contracted services, and this is where I've kind of sped through the other slides because this is where you'll probably find is a little bit more informative for you and what you're here for. So did you know we offer a hospital aftercare service? Yeah, we have done for nearly 20 years. We've been based here at the hospital for 20 years now, co-located in various locations. We kind of get moved around wherever the hospital discharge team and the social work team are, we sort of following and working with them. So yes, we're currently sited within the patient discharge unit, which has sort of temporarily been moved at the moment opposite Ward 16. And we're very much part of that team, and we really feel that, you know, we are valued. So we work closely with the discharge team, with the social workers, the Frauti team, the occupational therapists, geriatricians. And what we do is it's very much around facilitating discharge, getting the patient home, and then hopefully working with the other community services, keeping that patient at home as well. So when I say what we do about facilitating discharge, that might be if the patient needs to go home and have a hospital bed, they live on their own, there's nobody to access the property, enable that bed to be delivered, maybe some furniture needs to be moved to make space for the bed, or beds have got to be brought from upstairs to downstairs living, etc. We can do that. We've got a team of handymen and staff that can go and do that. We can install key safes. We offer loan key safes. Those of you who don't know, key safe is literally as it says it is, you know, metal box on the outside of the wall that you keep a key in with a code so that carers can access and they can get in to support their patients. We can then transport patients home. So as long as the patient can mobilise and get in and out of the car, we will take them home. We work 7 days a week. We're 8 in the morning to 8 at night here at the hospital, and like I say, we're getting those patients home, we're settling them in, we're looking at their home environment, we're looking at what other support they might need, we're making sure they're clean, they're warm, you know, the bed's clean, they've got fresh food in the fridge, we've got rid of any out-of-date food, things like that. Just that, like I say, the practical support that will hopefully enable them to stay at home, and then we can carry on with that support for up to 6 weeks after their discharge. We will also work with the teams out in the community, like the rapid response teams, so that if they're perhaps treating a patient or a client who's been taken unwell at home, they can then also come to us for us to support to hopefully prevent that person from actually coming into hospital. We do have a really good relationship with the hospital, I must say. It wasn't so good in the early days. It's really taken time for us to get into the mindset of the staff and to think about using us. Up to 2013, all we offered was the 6-week support after discharge. From 2013, that's when we introduced the transport home, and that did take time. In the first quarter, we took home 6 patients. We're now taking home 100 patients a month. So it is a lot, yeah. So, you know, we are doing a lot, and we're recognised now, and it's fantastic. We get invited to be part of any sort of specific working groups. I've been part of the virtual ward, the SDEC groups. My service manager, she works with patient experience board. And something that she brought to the table was the fact that we realised sometimes, in fact, too often, patients were going home in inappropriate clothing. You know, we're expected to take them home in maybe just a night dress and socks, and we've got to get them from cars, walking up paths, etc. So some work is now being done around that, about sourcing some clothing that we can provide to patients. I'm also working closely as part of Being Green. There's a walking aid reuse project, and I read about it in one of the hospital newsletters, and I thought we could do something here. So I've offered up our home and furniture store at Kiln Farm and our office over at Pear Bridge as a drop-off point for people that do go home with walking aids from the hospital, so that we can get them back. They can drop them off at our centres, and I believe that we're also trying to get the actual recycling centres in Milton Keynes engaged in this as well, and then we will arrange for that equipment to make its way back to the hospital so it can be recycled and used again. So we're always looking for opportunities that we can work with the hospital and show that, you know, how we can support them. We do have communications about our services that go out in Joe's lovely weekly newsletter. And I think patients and staff, they see us as with that non-statutory service, and I think staff recognise that we can do things that other people maybe can't do. You know, one story that we always had one ward that we had difficulty getting onto this ward and being accepted on this ward until they came to us with a patient whose daughter had died, and the patient wanted to be able to go to the funeral. At the hospital were happy to release her for the day, but they needed someone to take her to this funeral, which was actually on the south coast. We said, we'll do it. And we did it, and you know, it just helps that patient's well-being. You know, it you know, perhaps would have impeded her recovery if she'd been worrying about what she couldn't do. So you know, staff understand that impact that we can have. We do work well with senior staff as well, that we feel we can go to them if we do have any issues. We've had sort of several issues over the years with parking arrangements for our staff. But you know, we know who we can go to, and that we will get the support that we need to help us as an organisation. So the hospital aftercare service is actually a commissioned service. We're currently commissioned by the ICB and have been for the last 4 years. But from April this year, we're coming under the MK deal. And so the local authority are going to be commissioning this service going forward, and we're looking at how we can grow it, how we can expand it. What else can we be doing working with the hospital to help you? We already increase our capacity when we know you're under pressure. You know, I will get more staff on board so that we're able to support more patients and hopefully get them moved out and at home. So I'm really excited for the future, like I say, in working with this MK deal and you know, seeing what we can do. The other, oh, and I forgot to say actually, this service is for all adults. It's not just 18 older people, it's 18 plus. So it's where it's a little bit different from our other services. And the same goes for social prescribing. So social prescribing is getting more recognised now. People are understanding what social prescribing is. It's very much around, we say it's our approach to empower people to have the best well-being possible through engagement with the community. So this is about supporting people with their well-being to achieve what they would like to achieve, rather than them continually going to their GP or turning up here at A&E because they don't know where else to go, and they just want someone to talk to. You know, back in the early days, we had a patient referred to us who was always calling the emergency services and being brought in. She, you know, she did have some health conditions, don't get me wrong, but the minute she got into A&E, she is up, she's out, she's making teas and coffees for other patients, and she's chatting to people. That's what she wanted. We were able to take her on as a volunteer and get her moving into our lunch clubs where she could support people and talk to people, and we saw a great reduction in those calls on services. So we have 12 link workers who work around Milton Keynes. We work with 5 of the 7 primary care networks in Milton Keynes. We have link workers embedded within those primary care networks. We also are part of the education programme for medical students, and I will talk to them about the role of the voluntary sector and the non-medical intervention that we can bring as an organisation to help them, you know, so that they can pass on hopefully that information as and when they're dealing with patients. And it's about having those guided conversations really with that person, like I say, to achieve the outcome that we would like for them. So yeah, as an organisation, like I said, we're working with our commissioners. We're looking at how we can sort of enhance our current provision for supporting patients. I've given you a few statistics there about the numbers of older people in Milton Keynes and how that population is growing. And we know that's the pressure is going to put on existing services. So that's why we want to work and have a really good relationship and see what we can do. The preventative services, they do help to reduce the demands on trust, on GPs, etc. Like I've said, it's by providing that practical support, that non-medical intervention, that's where we like to think that hopefully we can help to keep people out of hospital, keep people feeling safe, keep people in their own homes. So I've sort of finished the presentation. We're just sort of saying our clients are your patients. We've got that common goal, and we should continue to work together because we all want happier, healthier and supported older people. So I've kind of sped through there, sorry. But obviously you've got the slide there to digest at your own time. So thank you for listening to me. And if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Great.
Yeah, I've got one.
Yes.
You mentioned you work with 5 of the 7 PCNs.
Yes.
What's stopping you working with the other 2?
So we did work, so the one that we don't work with, but we did work with, is the Watling Street Network, and they've since gone private, and they've taken on, they brought all their staff in-house. So whereas they used to pay us basically to employ somebody to work within their network, they've now taken that role internally. The other network is East MK, and what they do is, because alongside the PCN link workers, we also have a social prescribing service called Live Life, which is based over at our office at Pear Tree, and that's where we've got staff that work from home and take referrals from anywhere. So the East MK PCN, they generally just signpost into that rather than having an in-house link worker.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent service, and conceptually it's, and practically it's absolutely what should be happening. Definitely got my full support and commitment to it. In terms of the funding of it, you mentioned this, I'm not too familiar with the MK New Deal.
MK Deal, yes.
Deal, sorry. So what happens, are there any issues with cross-border? For example, I live just outside of Milton Keynes, technically in central Bedfordshire, but this is my local hospital. So do you have any issues with MKC paying for it, but the elderly person lives in Leighton Buzzard? Or...
Yeah, so the criteria that we have as part of the commission service is that we can only support patients who live in Milton Keynes or have a Milton Keynes GP. So the Milton Keynes GP, we can kind of pick up people that maybe live just across the border,
so
maybe like Old Stratford.
So that's the hospital's problem to figure out where this person lives and which.
Yes, so they will know if it's a Milton Keynes resident, etc. They can signpost them to us. Sometimes people do still come through to us, but we will then just signpost them on to like HK.
It's not really a headache for you then.
No, not at all.
Okay, great. Well done. Thank you.
No, and you know, the resident, they could go to Northampton Hospital, they could go to Bedford, but it's fine because they're a Milton Keynes resident. We can still do it.
Thank you very much. I can see a couple of hands up. Bailey?
Thanks, firstly. It was a fantastic presentation. I've certainly learned a lot, but I have just 1 or 2 quick questions for you, if you don't mind. It's really good to see the hospital aftercare. I didn't realise it was for the over 18s rather than over 55s. So in that respect, how are you making sure that over 18s are aware of it, or are you comfortable they know everything they need to know? Linked to that, it's really good to hear that you're already talking about virtual wards. I think that's a very exciting sort of thing. But is that going to necessitate any change in your approach for the hospital aftercare? And do you, well, I suppose 3-part question, and do you have already set up mechanisms for measure of success? How can we quantify the benefits that your work is bringing and the number of people that you are managing to, the pressure you're managing to alleviate from Milton Keynes Hospital?
Okay, so I think I'm trying to remember those. Yeah. So I forgot what the first point was now already.
Have the over 18.
18 plus.
Yeah. So the hospital know that, like I say, we've been here 20 years now, and we've built up the relationship so well that the staff that do refer into us, and the social workers and the discharge coordinators, etc., and the the staff that work in the A&E department, they do know that it's 18 plus. So we don't have any issues. Admittedly, yes, the majority of patients that do come to us that need our services are probably in the older brackets, because you generally find that younger people have got family, they've got support around them. No, there's no issues there at all with us having difficulty in getting 18 and over patients referred to us.
That's really good to hear. I was coming more from those patients' point of view, because they might be fretting and worrying unnecessarily when your services will be provided unbeknown to them, perhaps.
So yeah, I mean, we have a good presence on the wards. So we will go and talk to patients on the wards. We will tell them about our services. We are mentioned in all the literature around the discharge of the patient, so they know that our services are available. Like I say, ward staff, they know about us. Our leaflets are on the wards, etc. So we are there. It's not a problem. We've never sort of come across people worried they're not going to get our service.
That's great. And then how do we measure the benefits of your good service then, especially when
Well,
with the virtual wards changing the mix?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult one to answer. I mean, I can demonstrate, yes, how many patients we've taken home. I can demonstrate how many patients we've facilitated discharge for. It's hard to put a figure on maybe how many bed days that has saved the hospital. I don't know. I don't have access to that information, and it's not something our commissioners have ever sort of answered for us. I would like to think, even just by saving one bed day, we're saving the hospital a lot of money by just enabling that person to get home sooner than they would have done if we weren't able to provide the support that we do. But like I say, I do have to report back to my commissioners on the amount of people, the number of people we've transported home. I have to report on ages, ethnicity, gender, what we've done for that person. Like I say, how many key safes we've fitted, how many furniture moves, and etc.
Just thinking, actually, that's a very good point. But because, well, both Joe and I linked in with the Integrated Care Board and Partnership. And actually, I'll make a note, because I'll ask about that. As they're commissioning the services, how do they look at the impact? Because that's significant, particularly when we're looking at, trying to make sure we get as many patients through, and address the backlog, especially.
I was just going to say as well that the impact of your preventative services as well. I know that's even harder to measure.
It is,
but really crucial, isn't it? Even more when we're talking about discharge and your involvement in the MK deal.
I mean, social prescribing, figures do go to the NHS, so they are actually able to report on the number of reduced A&E attendances and the GP appointments and things like that. So that we do have that data, but the hospital aftercare service.
But it would be great to have all of that, because I would hope that would lead to increased funding for you, so that we can keep this positive spiral just going up and up.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I was just going to say, part of that picture presumably is the feedback and ratings and survey from your clients, isn't it? Which...
That's right, and that's what we collate. So every patient that we support, we do get feedback from them and the impact that the service has had on them and how they've benefited from the service, and that does get reported back to the commissioner as well. And we have some great case studies and stories and the work that we've done as well.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking that the emphasis on collaboration, you know, with voluntary sector and other groups and things, to have this information. To have this information would be so good, you know, going forward, to see how well it works.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce just how challenging it is to measure this kind of the social value that organisations create.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done some of that in my professional life, and it requires a significant investment of time and activity.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's important,
Yeah.
but I think we need to understand what we mean by impact.
Yes.
And, you know, generally when people talk about impact, they're talking about what change does it make in to people's lives. And I think the real shorthand is about the stories.
Yeah.
You know, in the absence of kind of more detailed assessment, what are the stories that people are telling you? How do we reflect that back?
Yeah.
The other thing I would say while I'm speaking is that I think it's really important to hear these kind of presentations, because I think there can be a lack of understanding of how significant a contribution the voluntary sector makes to health. And I know in theory that's kind of recognised, and I think it's clearly recognised in Milton Keynes because we're based on partnership. But I think the whole of the ICS system is actually based on building on these kind of partnerships. And I think in order to do that, it requires a little bit of a culture shift, perhaps in order to kind of deepen those partnerships. So I think it's worth just making that comment. The other thing is just a question, kind of based on my experience, and I suspect of yours as well. You mentioned about the MK deal. I think one of the challenges, I think, for many organisations having contracted services is the length of the contract.
Yes.
And if you're constantly in that situation where you're doing things on an annual basis, it's very difficult to plan. It's very difficult to deliver consistent services. So do you have the opportunity to say with 3-year contracts? If not.
No, so historically they've been 2-year contracts.
2-year contracts.
2-year contracts. I don't know. Our contract at the moment finishes 31st of March. I don't know yet what my contract for next year will be.
Absolutely classic.
Which makes recruiting staff
of course does.
impossible, because I don't know what I can offer my
I think that's exactly the kind of an issue that we have to fix as part of the ICS. We should be having standard kind of thing that says, you know, contracts should be 3-year long, and you know, at the end of year 2, you start the negotiations and whatever, because otherwise you can't retain staff, you can't recruit staff. It's just so much uncertainty.
No. And I will say recruitment is a massive issue for us at the moment, as I know it is.
And retention.
Health and social care.
Retention.
Retention, once we get them, it's because they love what they're doing and they're not working for us. But it is getting them to begin with. We can't offer the competitive salaries that you know other organisations can offer, etc. But it does always make me think as well. You know, every year you get the winter pressures, and every year you know somebody will come to us and say, "Well, we've got some funding. What can you do to help increase your capacity, etc." It's happening every year, so why not just give us the funding? You know, keep it going, so we can keep it going.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic presentation.
Sorry, can I just bring, because Keith's just been waiting for his hand up. Sorry about that. Keith, did you want a question?
Yes, thank you very much. I thought I'd been waiting a while. I wanted to go first because I'm going to start my comment with wow. Thank you, Laura, for a fantastic presentation. My question is specifically to do with the penultimate slide, where the hospital-based service, i.e. moving the patients home. What percentage of those are delivered by volunteers and what percentage are delivered by your staff? Because I could see some that could be done by volunteers with a reasonable training, but some would probably need a bit more than a volunteer status to get people from the ward to their homes.
Yeah, so as the commission service, this particular service, it is all staff. I don't use volunteers on this service. Volunteers are fantastic, but volunteers can at the drop of a hat say, sorry, I can't work today, you know, and I can't do that. If I know I've got patients booked to come out that need the transport, I've got to have that security that I've got this workforce to deliver that. So no, we do use staff, and even like the handymen that we use as well. you know, with the furniture moves, putting the key safe up, things like that. They are staff. Admittedly, some of the staff are on 0-hour contracts. We do use 0-hour contracts. Others are on contracted hours, but yeah, it's this service. I've tried it with volunteers and it doesn't work.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for a very clear answer. Thank you, Alison.
Thanks, Keith. Gary.
Just a quick from me. Thank you for your presentation. It's fantastic. In your opinion, Laura, is the hospital making the most of the services that you offer?
I'd like to say yes. We have noticed recently that more patients are getting booked onto transport rather than using us. I don't know why. I'm trying to get to the bottom of that, because we've seen an increase in the number of patients that need our support once they're home, but we're not getting always asked to actually take them home. Whether or not that's just because that patient's maybe got higher needs and maybe they need to go on an ambulance, you know, stretcher, etc. The discharge, I mean, I was on call at the weekend and the discharge officer phoned, so we've got a patient going home on transport, and his excuse for using transport was the patient needs to be home for a tea time call by the carers. I was like, well, we could still have done that. We could still have got them home. I've got my staff ready and waiting, you know. So myself and the service manager, we're going to have a chat with Jane Bignall, who heads up the patient discharge team, to have that sort of conversation to find out why that's happening, because it wasn't before. It just seems to have been a dip in those sort of referrals to us. So yeah.
Because it's a far more cost-effective way of doing it.
Absolutely, you know, you've got a 2-man crew and an ambulance.
Yeah, absolutely.
My members start using their car.
Yeah.
So mine was a slightly, actually Gary got it for me. It's a slightly different, similar question, but different. As a hospital, a good and integrated service with us. So what would we do less of and more of in terms of our focus to make to exploit the service to its fullest potential?
I mean, for us, it is obviously continually talking about what we can do and demonstrating what we can do. I mean, I know that staff are always changing, so it is, like I say, we try and have the presence on the wards to talk about what we do and getting involved in working groups. I always say, just ask us. If you hit on something that you think, oh, I'm not sure who could do this or who could help us, please do just ask us. If we can do it, we'll do it. We'll find a way of doing it. You know, so yes, anything that, like I say, from that sort of, like I say, non-medical intervention perspective, then do please think, okay, let me ask AGK and see if that's something they can help with.
Yeah, so a big ask then for you is for you to come to up with our agenda when we're starting to think through these things, is actually could that service help us to provide?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so you know, you've got a patient that you can't move on for what, you know, that reason, that think, okay, yeah, you know, maybe the family holding things up and not allowing access to the property for stretcher assessments, things like that. We can go, obviously with the patient's permission, but we'll go and access the property and enable that.
That's really, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I thought that was a really rich presentation, and I think it really demonstrates that AGKMK operate a really rich, diverse amount of services that really wrap around the whole of the patient when it comes to health and well-being. And I think, and I'm sure, I know we're talking about the MK deal and their priority around system flow, and I'm sure you're well embedded, but I think, you know, it's important to mention, I think, in terms of integrating health and social care and the voluntary sector partners, your organisation has a really key and crucial role in being a real best practice. And I think you're probably almost all the way there, but that kind of structural integration is still to come. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with that. I think we'll be getting involved in the system flow stuff.
Yes,
anyway,
we are.
so
Yeah,
it'd be really good to work with you on that as well.
Yeah, great. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. That's
Thank
really
you.
got some debate going on. That's so interesting. Thank you.
No,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
look forward to working more closely with you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for having me and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Well done,
Thank you very
Laura.
much.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Right, lots there. Going on then to item 12, membership and engagement managers report. Kate, I know you're down for this. You happy to do it or a double act?
Yeah, I might introduce it and then do a double act with Kwame, because it's really Kwame and Louis' work. But I think it's great work. I know lots of people in this meeting are involved as well, and are going out and doing different meetings and really bringing the engagement strategy to life. So thank you all, because it obviously relies on all of you getting involved. There's a huge amount going on. I think the paper sort of speaks for itself really, and we're doing some work across different teams in the hospitals to bring engagement more closely together. So lots of groups professionally do engagement, maternity do an awful lot, obviously the patient experience team, the communications teams, there's all sorts going on. So we're trying to bring that together in a more cohesive strategy, so that we're not targeting the same group, engaging with the same people all the time, and spreading our engagement around to target different groups of people, get different views for different things. But Kwame, I don't know if you want to add anything around the detail.
Just to add to the coordination, that thing that what you said about coordination. As in January, myself, Louis, and Idris, who is the BP for inclusion and engagement, we went out and we went out to the various. We were trying to engage with the faith community. So went out to churches, mosques, and temples. And as we've gone further and further, realized that a lot of the departments, units, individuals are doing the exact same things. We decided that it would be good, and after talking to Kate, the idea that we need to coordinate this is sort of gaining traction. And I think I've sort of nominated Louis, and it will be good, because we had a meeting with R&D, who also does some of the same things, and the idea that we coordinate and we standardize all the not to make it too standardized, but to standardize, go towards standardization of the engagement, so that we can get the right feedback, get the right, and not to get to a point where you go to the people and they might think the hospital, one arm of the hospital doesn't know what the other arm is doing. So it'll be good to coordinate, and then we get the feedback, and that'll make sure that will help us to reap all the rewards in the engagement work that everybody is undertaking. So that's where it's going, and I think the report is speaks for itself.
Thank you. Thanks, Beck. Any questions at all? Okay, just to add a little bit, is that I've recently had some discussions with a couple of the universities in our patch, which are very interesting, and they're hoping to speak with colleagues, particularly around our inclusion agenda. So I'm hoping that something will come out of that as well, to add to the whole sort of the plans and expand them. But also, I think there's potential that we could get some support as well from others who are already doing some work, and we can sort of almost piggyback on that. So anyway, I'll come back when we've got more detail around that. But I've had some very interesting discussions which are full of opportunity, I think.
Thank you. There was mention of the parish councils in there as a source of candidates and members. Have we ever tried other local groups like Heritage and History, groups that are not necessarily to do with parish councils, but are to do with the community sector? For example, the council should have a list of hundreds of community bodies that do planned walks on a Sunday, or an archaeology society, and there's always a phone number or an email. Have we tapped that as a resource?
We've tried the council, but it's not been very, very successful until now. And I see that Keith's hand is up. So we've made contact with Keith, who is giving us some ideas, and I think that will open doors. Yes.
Yeah, Keith from the local authority. Yeah, Keith, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I thank you for that introduction, Kwame. I was there's plenty on the council website, but two other places that would be good to get lists of organisations operating in and around Milton Keynes would be Community Action and the Community Foundation, because they both interact and in one case support heavily lots of organisations within the city. So that would be another option to go out that way to find. And so those are my two quick suggestions at this point.
Yeah, Kwame?
Yeah, we work close. We working trying to engage closely with the community foundation. It's progressing slowly, but we hope to get there. We've not really got in touch with community action, so that's an idea. We'll look at that, and so the things as we progress, the doors are keep opening, so it's all good. Yeah.
If you want a hand with the community foundation, I'm a vice president there. We'll have a chat afterwards, and I'll see whose door you need me to kick out open.
I think that'll start with Peter Bakari and and then.
I think we're lucky as well because on the board we have NEDs and associate NEDs who are trustees at the Community Foundation, which is very useful. So yeah, it is really progressing actually. I mean, I've been here a couple of years and it's this. I think the last few months it's really started taking off. So and all credit to Kwame and Louis and Idris as well. They've been out and about and really working hard on making connections. So it's great. So thank you all. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for that update. Then we get on to Lead Governor's report. Babs.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Firstly, sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm sure none of you want my cold and sore throat. Though I can come over there and give that all to you if you want. But in terms of my recent involvement has been with the NED and the Associate NED recruitment. So on behalf of all the governors, I'd like to welcome Mark, Precious and Ganesh, and also hello to Dev. Nice to see you. But in between being ill and various other dramas in my non-governor life, and also this being the beginning or the start of the new year-ish, I've been thinking about the role of governor and the meat and bones of our actual role, and posing the age-old philosophical question of what is the actual point of a hospital governor? Now, I won't take you through my philosophical musings, and I didn't have time to find a suitable quote by, say, Plato, but whilst in my meeting last week with Maxine from Healthwatch and also Alison, I came to a simple and obvious conclusion, and this comprised of basically two words, and that those being patient outcomes. We're all aware of patient outcomes, but I believe sometimes as governors, this gets lost when we use phrases like holding to account and engaging with the public, until, for example, like today, we have a patient-centric presentation from partners like Age UK, Milton Keynes, etc. Now, all governor roads should lead to being part of improving or the continued good patient outcomes for the diverse people within Milton Keynes. And thinking of patient outcomes helps us governors frame our thoughts, our queries by applying basically the appropriate lens through which we engage with the public. Also, how we consume reports from the trust board. You know, sometimes it's just full of numbers and things that we may not quite get to grips with, but actually there are simple questions about what the point of that report is and what does it achieve. Also, how we interact within the Council of Governors and our interaction with our NEDs. Now, the governors are soon to get together in our away day, which is a fantastic opportunity to spend some face-to-face time together and really get to grips with what we've been elected to do. And I'm very much looking forward to all of this. So yes, so that's my musings, my thoughts, which we'll take into the year and hopefully formulate something that will make us and our work very much more productive. Thank you.
Thanks, Babs. That's great. Thank you very much. Sorry, I've got to put my glasses on. John, would you like to come in?
Thank you. My name is John Joseph. Just had this is subsequent to what Babs said about patient outcomes. Kate Jarvis mentioned about the patient experience team, and Professor Harrison's statement about what is happening in the organization. I'm a pediatrician who had retired from the NHS a few years ago, and I'm re-engaging back in, and I'm actually going through a few scopings of honorary attachments with CAMS, community pediatrics, and acute pediatrics. One thing where everybody might be able to help a few people is the children and young people presenting to ED with deliberate self-harm. Sometimes they need hospitalization, and there is a severe shortage of even temporary holding places within Milton Keynes for these children, and they're actually doing with one interim bed reserved, sometimes available, sometimes not, for a very dangerous sort of decision where it is left in the hands of the clinician to find a place with only one place in Campbell Center, and they have to virtually ring around the country to find a sort of intensive care kind of place to hold these children. And leaving, stepping back from the children themselves, we are sometimes, these are sometimes children of parents who are our postmen, our teachers, professionals whom we know, and they are actually struggling. And it might be a huge service if everybody could come together. We are in the middle of the MK deal, talking about MK deal, and we're talking about integrated care boards, and where these could be put together. If somebody could help these children, it might be huge service, which can be, all we might need is some standby beds where these services could be extended. It might be a huge benefit. Thank you, John Joseph. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Yes, and as somebody that I've spent a lot of my non-executive career in mental health services and learning disability services. So yeah, I'm very aware of the challenges nationally that we have, but obviously locally as well. Kate, do you want to come in?
Well, I was just going to say, I think, yeah, thank you for that. It's such an important issue, and one, as an exec team, we are really involved in looking with our partners to try and find solutions. We are involved day to day operationally in trying to find the best care locations, the most appropriate care locations possible for patients, adults and children. We know that the whole sector is really struggling around the lack of specialist mental health provision for children and for adults often. But we're working very closely with CNWL and others to try and find good long-term solutions. I think it's going to continue to be really challenging. It's conversations we've also had with our regulator around, the risk around children being, remaining in the wrong place of care, not the safest place for them. So absolutely, it's absolutely vital, and something that we really need to be retaining focus on, and we are. I don't know if everyone wants to add anything to that, but please be assured that it's a huge area of focus for us.
Yeah, and it's a very thanks, Kate. It's a very important aspect of care, and I think just to reinforce what Kate's saying, for those individual children and their families, this has been handled at executive level. So the conversations that are being had about the appropriate and timely placement of the children into a place of safety where they get the treatment and care that they need is something that is right from the clinical team all the way up to the top of the organisation. Everybody is focused in and around the individual patient and their family and making sure that they're supported. The conversations we have with the families, because they can be equally as frustrated about the lack of traction on trying to get the appropriate placement. They are assured at every step of the way that we are trying to do everything in our power to enable that suitable placement. It's deeply frustrating. And actually conversations that come back, and this is very, very important, is that we never, ever lose sight of the individual child and their family. And that's what our conversations are always about, is keeping our focus on that.
Thank you.
But it's difficult. It is difficult.
Yeah, there's no easy answer. But I think there's a very good point that John made as well around, looking at the Milton Keynes deal, the flow and the conversations that need to happen there, and working with our voluntary sector as well and other partners. Who knows, perhaps we might be a sector that actually comes up with a brilliant idea, just by coming together and trying to resolve this. But yeah, no, be assured, John, that yes, as Yvonne has said, this is, the young person and their family is very much at the centre of all the discussions, and it is frustrating that we can't, produce an easy and straightforward solution, but there has to be a solution.
It's my, I might not be up to speed, it's my understanding that there has been some funding made available to develop closer to home patient services for children.
For children, or nationally?
No, in BLMK, it's being developed a little while ago.
Right.
I couldn't comment on the intricate details of that.
No, I'm not.
It was my understanding that some,
Yeah.
it has been noted the lack of
Yeah.
space, and I
Yeah.
do believe funding has been made available, and they're developing a unit. I think it's near Luton, but because all the placements are so out
yes,
of
in the
area,
ICB, yes,
so far away.
But I think that's East London Foundation Trust. So sorry,
Yeah,
I was thinking about Central and North West.
But it
London.
is somewhere a lot closer.
Yeah,
It's
they
not-
are. Yeah.
Not the answer.
No, but they are talking about inpatient facilities, because certainly when I was working in mental health in Bedfordshire, that was one of the biggest problems, is there was nowhere for young people. They had to go out of the area, which was not good. So yeah, I have heard that there is a plan to build a unit. So hopefully that will, in fact, I'll make another note from my next meeting. I will ask again when I have my next meeting. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Okay, thank you very much for that. Oh, sorry, Shelley.
I just want to say, I think I was on a bit of the same thought process as Babs this week, because I was reading the board papers, and there was the patient story there, which is always very engaging, you know, you get into it. But having read it, and I've had this thought before, I tend to think at the end of it, and then what?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, so what was the improvement? What was the learning?
Yeah.
You know, where did we go from that story? Because some of them are really quite horrendous, aren't they? You know, you feel quite gut wrenched that you know when you've read it. But I was thinking, what was the next chapter?
Yeah, so I think actually that's quite an interesting point, because a lot of the slides that are used there, remember, we're bringing in staff who are not used to maybe presenting in a forum to an executive board. And so it acts more of as an enablement part. So the discussion that we have when the presentation happens is quite focused around the improvements. But I've never thought about that. You might be reading that and just taking it at face value. And so perhaps we're actually redeveloping the structure around patient stories. So we'd like to see more of actually the patient story communicated in the patient's voice, whatever mechanism that might be. So that could be in person. It could be via different types of technology, but it'd be nice to do that
quite some time ago. They used to get the actual patient in, but I mean, it's not
so the
always.
structure of that is important about that. So we're doing some work around that. But what I will do is I'll take away that it's clear in the slide pack that actually what are the improvement outcomes to come out of that, because they are really quite radical and transformative.
And you covered in the executive board, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I did assume something was happening, but I'm reading it and going.
Yeah. Yeah, where did it go from there? Yeah. No, it's a good observation. So yeah, I mean, certainly, and this is really helpful because obviously we want to make it, particularly our wallpapers, you know, because that's open to the public. So we want to make it so people feel they've got something out of it and understand what's going on. And
I did actually get a member of the public contact me this week with a query which I just had to pass on to PALS. It wasn't something I could deal with. But one of their concerns was, if I raised this concern, they were doing it on behalf of their parent, would it impact the parents' care? And of course, I was able to say, well, no, this is what we do. This is, you know, part of the culture of you know, the NHS as a whole. We look at this for improvement, but you know, that patient story doesn't back that up, does it? When you actually just read that could kind of like be your story of somebody who is making a complaint or had an incident or something, and you don't see the learning, the improvement.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I was just going to say, the Integrated Care Board on the 27th of January, they had a patient come and tell his story. He was not completely comfortable with sharing the whole story because it was a meeting in public. So they had a private session later where he could come back. So they did his story in the public bit, and then he came to the private section to speak to board members. And I found that really effective. I must say, it's probably the first time since I've worked at it that I've actually seen a patient turn up and talk about their story. And I think it's more emotive. It really just connects you to the patient. And I think we should make all efforts to do that really and support them in that process, because it is really difficult and it is always hard to to kind of read between the line, you know, a summary is always that entire story.
Absolutely. And I think the freedom to speak up Guardian is that's another route that's very good. I mean, we had the presentation before Christmas. I know some people here were there as well, but they have a whole stock, if you like, of patient stories and members of and family members as well who are happy to go and talk to boards. So it could be, even if they're not from your patch, but it may be around something that is relevant for, you know, for incidents that have happened in your own patch. So, you know, those people are comfortable to actually to share that in a public forum and what the results are. That can be very, very powerful as well. But yeah, you have to tread carefully. Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks. Perhaps that really set us off in a discussion. So thank you very much. And thanks for everybody's input on that. That's great. So we move now on to HealthWatch. Maxine, just verbal after our discussion last week, so I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I think we've all been thinking philosophical the last few weeks. But I met with Alison and Babs last week because I know I feel rather that the HealthWatch role, not just as a governor, but generally the HealthWatch role, I think it's stagnated a lot in terms of relationships with the hospital since the pandemic, for obvious reasons. Prior to that, we'd had quite an active kind of enter and view activity across various wards and probably had more to say perhaps to the governors, but I think a lot of that has changed. And I was thinking, you know, the reports that I always send in, we don't get significant amounts of feedback, general feedback from the hospital, because you have an effective PALS team. You know, it's well known, patients are encouraged to raise their just general views, and you have a big database management all, and hopefully going to your ward managers with feedback, and that generally works really well. And the people that come to us are generally those really complex cases, or the relationships with PALS just haven't worked, and they're seeking, you know, advice around escalating that, or, you know, other advocacy support. So, you know, those are often quite sensitive, and we can't always bring, and it's not always appropriate to bring those particular cases to this board either. It just shows a snapshot. So in the meeting with Babs and Alison, I recommended that I take, perhaps as a role as appointed governor here, a bit more of a focus on the patient experience reports that are going to the trust board, and bringing some reflections on those, and kind of hoping to try and bring a bit more of a cycle to, from a HealthWatch perspective, supporting governors to say, okay, does any of this tie up with some of the general feedback that we are seeing, and just areas that we'd like to explore, and hopefully outside that outside of this role, perhaps kind of work back into how can we support the patient engagement team to perhaps have independent enter reviews, particularly around those patient experience trends on wards where you feel like you're getting really stuck on issues, and how can we help by going in and listening to patients and putting across some ideas and suggestions like that. So I also spoke perhaps whether it'd be useful to have a bit of a virtual session just for public governors and HealthWatch perhaps in the summer, so you'd have some questions about our role and how we can support governors connecting into communities as well, because we do have a wide membership, and I know my comms officer and Louis are always connecting and making sure that we promote a lot of governor activities and opportunities. But your thoughts on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it was a good conversation. So any comments or thoughts from governors particularly? Obviously, you're happy to fly over the suggestion, you know, yeah. Do you want to give it a go? And certainly we can look at having that a virtual session arranged for everybody. I think that'd be really good actually, and just have, you know, have that sort of really open discussion. And as you say, focused on patient outcomes. I think that's great actually, because if we have that golden thread through everything we're doing, you know, those of us on the hospital side and our governors as well, I think that would be really, really powerful actually. Yeah. So is everybody happy with try with that new approach, and then obviously can review later on in the year and see how it's going? Brilliant. Thank you very much. So yeah, as you can tell, it was a very good session, wasn't it? Thanks, Maxine. a certain level of philosophy, but also, yeah, I mean, really looking at outcomes. I think that was
Yeah.
the other thing, wasn't it? It was a refresh. So I think it was very helpful. So thank you both very much. That's great. Okay, now we get on to some governance things, which hopefully people will be happy with. We've got here you can see the amendments as well, the tracking, but we've got the draft Council of Governors terms of reference with some proposed changes, and providing governors are happy, or unless they have any comments. William?
Yes, I mean, I think the first thing I would comment on, I think the changes in purpose, I think make a lot of sense. I think they bring some clarity to what leadership means in this sense, and so that you don't have a conflict with kind of the other parts of the system. So I think that's really good. The second point, membership and attendance, the point about the ICS representation, that doesn't read quite right, begins with one, so there's some, I think, some amendment that needs to happen there. But I think what Comey's put in brackets is if they wish to continue with this practice. Obviously, that won't remain. We need to clarify whether that's the case. Yeah. So, but that raises a question for me, which the answer which doesn't have to be included in here, but with the other categories of governors, we're quite clear where the nomination comes from, whether it's election or whatever. Yeah. What I'm not clear about is what part of the system. Yeah. I assume that probably be the ICB. Yeah. What part of the system? But so there just needs to be some clarity behind this. Yeah. If we're going to carry on with that, where that nomination comes from, and what their term of office would be, as with everyone else. So so that was done. And then I suppose the most significant thing is on the second page, which is about attendance. What we don't have here is a sanction for people who don't attend. Yeah, which is quite often you have in sort of, many sort of terms of reference. It's quite normal to be in the kind of situation that if someone hasn't attended for X meetings, that there's some kind of engagement with them to understand that. And I know, for example, when I was re-elected, probably maybe 2 years ago now, there was someone else elected alongside. I've never met the guy. So I don't want to cast dispersion or anything, but just using that as an example, it seems to me there needs to be some more kind of oversight of kind of attendance, and perhaps what we need to have added into here is something about how non-attendance is dealt with.
Yeah. I'm just, Kwame, yeah, he's coming on. Just wondering whether that would be an appendix. If they don't attend for those 3 out of 5, the appendix 1, the process will then.
Yeah, so I think it probably has to be an appendix is part of the best way to do it.
Yeah. What do you think, Kwame?
It's in the constitution, so but we can bring it here as
in the constitution.
Put the line there. Yeah. And I think, Alison, I don't know whether we've 2 people have left because they weren't attending. I don't know if that's one of them is what William is referring to.
Could be. Yeah. Could be. Yeah. We did have to deal with 2, not participated at all. So. Okay.
If it's in the constitution, I think probably all we need here is a cross reference. Here as to where it is.
Yeah.
And sorry. So the one about the ICS, I think that's also in the constitution. So last year when we revised the constitution, it wasn't clear about the ICS. And I think, Alison, what we're going to do this year, to tighten up the membership, that will be one of the things to sort out.
Yeah. I did ask, because I remember last year I did ask Rima about it, and at the time they were still setting up all their governance. So she said that's something they hadn't actually addressed yet. So I think it's probably time now for me to go back and say, have you made a decision? And then we can look at whether
I keep it. It hasn't been top of the ICB's agenda.
Probably.
They do have their working with people in communities committee well set up now, and I believe it's Manjeet Gill who is chair of that committee, so she sits on the ICB. But yeah, I think when we use the term ICSD, we probably mean ICB.
Yeah, I mean, the only comparison I would make is that, I mean, I'm involved with another ICS. And I'm unaware of this kind of process where basically the ICS are making nominations to, you know, governing governors of trusts.
Yeah.
It just seems to be quite, I'm not sure that
Slightly
quite
anomalous.
works personally, but anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think when the ICSs were set up, I don't think there wasn't a lot of thought given to foundation trust with governors. And I think that's, you know, they're kind of having to work it out as they go along. But that's fine because I can ask Rima as well.
If you ask Maria Wogan, she's the one with governance ladies, and she'll know.
I think
She'll know the
there's
answer
two
to that.
things. I think there's the issue about the principle.
Yeah.
And let's be clear why it's happening.
Yeah.
If it's happening, it needs to be consistent into all the trusts.
Yeah.
Into the ICS. And then secondly, the process and the terms of office and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really helpful. You're all right with that, Kwame? Because you're doing all the amendments. Yeah. So
All right,
subject. Great. Okay, so subject to those suggestions, is everybody happy with us to take those amendments through? Yeah. So we can work with those. That's great. And we'll pick up with the things with around the integrated care board and see whether or not that needs to stay in. Brilliant. And then there's the draft appointments committee terms of reference as well. Anybody?
Again,
Yeah, no,
I mean, I think all the kind of amendments I'm completely happy with.
Yeah.
It's just about something potentially missing.
Right.
What I don't see is any reference to how the members of the committee will be selected
right.
from the
governors.
From the governors. So I think that, again, that's probably an appendix.
Yeah. Again, is there something in the constitution around that, Kwame? Does it say three? I thought in the constitution it said 3 governors and the chair. Is that
I'm not talking about the numbers, I'm talking about how those people are identified
right, okay.
by the council of governors.
Yeah.
I mean, is it just you and you?
Yeah.
Or is there a
is there
process?
Process, yeah.
Yeah.
Volunteer, that's right, yeah. Volunteer.
Well, it may well be volunteers, you know, Stanford, but
yeah.
It's important not to be complex about it, but I think it just needs to be some kind of understanding of how those individuals will be identified.
Yeah, yeah. Kwame, what do you think? Is there a standard that we could use?
It's been volunteer so far, so we need to think.
Oh, yeah. Well, whatever.
So we could, okay.
I think that's maybe Alison, maybe let's take it offline maybe. So
yeah, yes, you and I have a discussion. Then perhaps we can circulate a suggestion so that we don't have to bring the whole thing back again. Is that all right? Okay, Kwame, you and I have a chat.
I mean, I don't think it requires an amendment here. It's just kind of understanding the process behind.
Yeah. Again, it could be, it could be an attachment to the
necessary,
okay, to the terms of reference. Brilliant. Okay.
Sorry to be the local pedant.
No. We need to get the governance right, don't we? So it's good. We need pedants. She says as a lawyer. Yeah. Okay. All right. Kwame, you happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Going on then, 17. I haven't had anything put to me to raise motions or questions. Hopefully, has everybody had their questions answered? Or yeah. Thank you very much. Any other business? Sorry.
We've got the board agenda planner.
Yeah, that's the next one. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm just doing it a little bit. Yeah, no, don't worry.
That's because you have to go right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not paper. Sorry.
Yeah. Any other business from anybody? Hopefully we've covered things. Thank you very much. Okay. Forward agenda planner. Shirley, did you have something?
Yeah, I just did think perhaps we could get some bullet points from the place audit on there because it is something that governors take part in. So it's quite nice to sort of see what the results were.
Yeah. Kwame, have you got that? Yeah. So right, okay, we can bring that back. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, that's a good one. Yeah, that closes the loop then, won't it? Great. Thank you very much for that. Dates of the next meeting is April, spring. That'll be nice. And I'm sure we'll do a hybrid again, probably. Hopefully people find this quite useful so we can get as good attendance as possible. So and really it's just for me to thank everybody. I think we've had some great discussions and great questions as well. I think it was really good having MK Age UK here. So I think that bodes well for other presentations from partners. So as I say, we'll review it again later on this year and find out how useful it is for everybody. But thank you all for your input and for attending. And we'll see you in April, if not before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all.
Get well soon,
Thank you,
lads.
everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.